5 heads.
What have we got there?
So 5 heads, 3 bodies, and 4 hands. Oh no, sorry. Looks like 10 hands. So okay. 3 on each, sorry, 2 on each body, and then another 2, like, I think fists they are.
Okay.
And then 3 cakes.
Okay, good.
Have a look at the back there. So I think they're all the same mold. Look at the head. So if we go for that one, I assume you want hair on him.
That's it.
Yeah. So we'll go for so we'll try this one. So generally, never use a paint straight out of the pot. So usually, I'll just sort of loosen up the brush a bit. Also, new brushes will always sort of have the tip stuck together, so you always want to loosen that up before you start painting. And then yeah, so I'll never use paint out of the pot. Generally straight out of the pot, it's quite thick, so you put it on your palette first, mix it around a little bit, get a bit more, and I'd probably add just a little bit of water to that before I actually pop it on the figure. And sort of mix it. But it's probably better, because we'll do an undercoat in black first, that usually helps. It makes the colours pop if you pop an undercoat on first. So generally for an undercoat you don't have to worry too much. And the advantage of doing an undercoat first is you kind of see how the paint behaves on the plastic. So this is kind of a glossy plastic, and the paint, as I suspected, is just sort of, I think it's a watercolour acrylic. So it goes alright, but I will have to keep it quite thick. So the undercoat's a good way to get sort of a gauge of how the paint behaves on the plastic. But then obviously remember, when you put your second coat on, the paint will then behave differently on top of the other paint, and it'll probably be more easier to apply. So that's one of the reasons we do the undercoat. And generally pick a point that you're going to hang on to. So in this case, I'm going to start hanging on to the chest, and then I can control the whole figure from the head. So what I'll do is I'll paint the legs and essentially start from the feet down. So by the time I'm finished with by the time I get to paint the head, the feet will be dry, and I can pick it up and do it at the other end. So generally you can be pretty rough with the undercoat, and it's really important to, as you do it, sort of move and have a look at the points of articulation and make sure that every bit that you'll see when you articulate when a position is covered in paint. Because there's nothing, because that's the other advantage of an undercoat. If in the crevice you see a little bit of black, it's not really a big deal, but if you see white, it really shines out and can really ruin what is otherwise a top-notch paint job. So the other thing you can look at how the paint behaves. So here, let's see if we can get that up to the camera. So just there, the paint's actually refusing to stick onto the plastic, so that's a really obvious sign there's too much water. So in that case, I just went straight from the pot and just pop paint straight on there. Usually for something like this, you don't have to, but if you want to save time, like if you're painting like a lot of models, you can either spray paint, but then if you do spray paint, you want to then do a touch-up of your undercoat to get those little crevices with a smaller brush, or you can just use a bigger brush. But obviously the disadvantage of using a bigger brush or spray painting is you've got to go back and touch up the little bits as well. And some of these can be quite time consuming, getting paint into the crevices, but it really does pay off if you have if you can get the whole figure black, because that way, as I said earlier, if you miss any bits when you do your actual colours on top, it's just black and it looks good and professional, as opposed to having gaping sort of white gaps. Alright, so we're almost done now. So as I said before, I've decided to hold on to the head, so I'm holding on to that, and I've sort of done 90% of it now. So as I was saying before, you want to make sure you get in the gaps, in the points of articulation. You don't want any white showing, and you'll find that as you move it, it'll scratch off a bit, so you just touch up as you go. And remember, always triple check to make sure you haven't messed anywhere. There's nothing worse than putting away your paints for the day and finding a spot you've missed. which I've done many a time. So always triple check and go over your painting a lot to make sure that it stays on. So we've mixed up our purple, so this sort of comes with primary colours plus a few secondary colours, or primary colours green, black and white. So we've mixed up a purple, it's sort of a darkish, almost just past maroon, so we'll give that a go and see how that goes. So sometimes it's a good idea, because since it's a superhero, probably want to go for something a little bit of a lighter purple. As you can see now, I'm popping on the black and you can't really tell, so I'm going to pop it on a little bit thicker. But what I then might do is actually on top of that pop a slightly lighter purple, so you get the darker purple in the recesses. But once again, it's just about experimenting till something works. Also, another simple rule, just like when you're working with wood, don't go against the grain, just pick a direction and stick with it when painting as much as you can. So like, I'm just going to go up, so try and get it as smooth as possible. Once again, this is like easier said than done, it just takes some practice. And I am by no means a master of it. There we go. So we're just going to paint the red parts now. So I'm going to paint this bit here red. So I'm going to go back and touch up the purple. And the annoying thing about this particular paint is it comes off quite easily, even with the gloves. So if you buy the kit straight out, I would suggest, if you can, try using other paint, at least for the undercoat, because it comes off quite easily, which means that you're sort of going over your old work a lot of the time. So just some red, as I said before, don't put it straight on, pop it on the palette first to see, to smooth it out in case it's got any lumps, as this paint has a little bit, and sort of get a feel for it, and then so immediately I'm picking up, I'm not going to add any water to this because it's barely sort of showing that it is, so I might have to do a couple of coats. Don't be discouraged if it comes out like this, just keep going. You can always do more coats, and if you make a mistake, you can always touch it up. I'm going to switch to a finer point brush, I think. The kit comes with two brushes. This one is good for bigger surfaces, but it doesn't really have a point. Sort of a tip to it, so for anything slightly delicate I might use the second one, which it's not super small, so if you wanted to like paint the eyes, for instance, you want a much smaller brush, but for stuff like this it's pretty good.